start securing transactions on the blockchain. I don't know if you guys can see right here. Okay. So, in this presentation, I'll first give you a bit of background about myself, then talk about what's in a blockchain and understanding a single block as well, and then we'll jump into the demo that I've got at the end for you as well. So about myself, I graduated from Canterbury University a long time ago in electrical engineering. I've spent most of my career in integration, and in the last couple of years I focused on cloud integration, so joining systems like MYOB and Xero in the cloud to the likes of Salesforce, or your ticketing system like Zendesk, or your social media platform like Hootsuite. I'm also a certified Atlassian trainer in Jira and Confluence, and I've been in the crypto space for just over 3 years now, and I've been studying full time since the beginning of this year. And even though I'm doing that, I still feel as if I'm behind the 8 ball, just because there's so much to learn. I've started a website called talkcrypto.org, just a blog about my research and findings and sharing with people in the community on Bitcoin, blockchain related information. Feel free to connect with me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'd love to know more about you guys as well. This is a screenshot of the website talkcrypto.org, but I'd like to draw your attention to the diagram on the right-hand side there. You see, blockchain technologies was initially started by geeks, very technical, but as it's evolved over time, it actually touches a lot of different aspects. There are legal implications, there are questions around taxation of cryptocurrencies, there are further questions around privacy and anonymity as well, and the list goes on. Blockchain technologies is a revolution that is going to affect each and every one of us, whether we like it or not. And it's these aspects of the technology that really makes it exciting. So first, a bit of history about Bitcoin, because it didn't just appear out of nowhere overnight. It was started, I guess, by a group of libertarian cyberpunk or cypherpunk movement, where a group of people wanted to create a more fairer and equitable financial system. What happened was, in the mid-90s, there were several attempts of creating digital money. There was DigiCash, there was something called Crypto Cash with the unfortunate name of Crash. There was also eGold, BitMoney, and B-Money and BitGold as well.
Marketing.
Bitcoin itself, unfortunately, has a lot of negative connotations around it. There's the trading of drugs on the now defunct Silk Road. There's online gambling, market speculation, and who could forget the crash or the collapse of Mt. Gox, the online exchange in Tokyo, where hundreds of millions of dollars of bitcoins were lost or stolen. Now, the history of this is actually fascinating, and if you want to read about it, which I highly recommend, there's this book called Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper. So you're probably thinking, well, why am I going about bitcoins? Isn't this about blockchains? Well, what's happened is that what I found is that everyone wants in on blockchain technologies and smart contracts. That's where the action is, that's where the hype is, and that's where the investment money is flowing, and rightly so. However, I found that to understand the blockchain, it's very helpful to take a step back and understand the Bitcoin blockchain. For example, did you know that you could create a smart contract on the original Bitcoin blockchain? It was very basic, called multisig, but you could. And it was this fact that someone like Vitalik Buterin came along years later and then said, what if we expand the capabilities of the smart contracts? Of course, you couldn't do this on the original Bitcoin blockchain, so he then got a team together and created his own framework and blockchain called Ethereum. So that's how he got into it. The definition of blockchain itself, if you ask 50 different people, you'd probably get 50 different, slightly different answers. But what they would have are some keywords inside, such as distributed or peer-to-peer, or things like a ledger or decentralization. To understand a blockchain, it's really useful to take a step back and understand what is inside an actual block.
Yep.
Here is an example of the Genesis block that I downloaded. You can see there's a bit of ASCII file on the right, ASCII text on the right-hand side. And it's quite a famous Genesis block because Satoshi put some information in there where on the 3rd of January 2009, he put a small little message there. There are various components of a single block, but it's quite hard to read. So what I did is I put this in a more user-friendly format, like so. So there are 5 components of a block. There's the magic number, the block size, the block header, the transaction count, and the transactions themselves. We can take this one step further and look at the components of the block header, the transactions, and inside the transactions there are inputs and outputs. You could think of these as the sender and the receiver. So this is all at a high level, just to give you an introduction that if you want to understand about blockchains, it's very useful to understand what's in a block. Briefly clarify the meaning of blockchains when I use it, because several years ago, the Bitcoin blockchain was the main one around. So when you use the word blockchain, it really meant the Bitcoin blockchain. But now, there's been this evolution where you've got different kinds of blockchains being created. Therefore, you get this categorization. And you've probably heard people talk about there's a public blockchain, you've got private blockchains, you've got permissioned and permissionless blockchains as well. Okay, let's now talk about securing transactions on the blockchain itself. So around the world, there are these nodes that participate and contribute to the blockchain network. What's happened is that these nodes, when they verify transactions, an example of a transaction could be maybe Hamish here is wanting to send 5 bitcoins to Gary, or maybe Sebastian's got claim of ownership to his 5 mansions in the Caribbean, right? So what the nodes do is they verify, does Hamish actually own 5 bitcoins? Or is the ownership true?
I got a 3.
When you get a 1, shout out.
Oh, 1.
There you go. And then all the other nodes will then confirm, yes, Sebastian got a 1. Therefore, that block there is valid. It gets chucked on the blockchain, like so. It's secured on the blockchain, it's immutable, it's locked in as part of history, and then the game or the puzzle continues again. And this just happens over and over and over again. So what happens is that energy is consumed in terms of electricity and processing power and time. Therefore, a reward is given. So at this point in time, I'm going to jump out of this. And I'm going to give this demonstration here where this website here is called litecoinpools.org. And you can all go to this website. You can log in. The username is meetup. The password is blockchain. And what's going to happen is that I'm going to communicate to my Raspberry Pi here. And there's this really long command line that I'm going to run. And when I hit enter, what this does is it fires up the Raspberry Pi. There's some software there called BFG Miner. It's going to jump out. It's tethered to my mobile phone. It's going to jump out over the internet to this location here, grab a piece of the block, and then try and solve the puzzle. What you can see in the background, it's starting up. It's going to try and detect the hardware device. And you can see here it's starting to accept, once it's sent back the results, the port has accepted this. You can see in the background there that the worker number 1 is going to kick into life. I might have to refresh. There you go. And now you can see that this board is actually hashing. It's part of the network, and I'm going to plug in the fan, otherwise this is going to heat up, melt, and burn.
Doesn't look like a Note 7.
What's that?
Doesn't look like a Galaxy Note 7.
And what you can see here is you've got the speed, which is at 17 megahashes per second. And this board here is actually rated at about 25. Now what happens is you can see that there's a reward payout here. And I can go to this calculator link and enter in 25. it takes into account the difficulty that you can see there. So instead of 3 on the dice, it's actually, I think, 52,000. It's got the Litecoin price of $3.81. And I'll disregard power and the power usage.
52,500.
Yeah, and I'll disregard the power consumption at the moment. I'll hit enter, and it's going to tell me that this setup here is going to bring in 94 US cents a day, which is actually not a lot. And if you take power into consideration, you're actually going to lose money, especially the power prices in New Zealand. Over 30 days, you'll be generating 28 US dollars. So if you can imagine this setup here and then think about what people are doing in China, multiplying this by 100, 1,000, 10,000 times, there are outfits in China that are creating hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cryptocurrencies, or US dollars, every single month just doing this. So just a quick summary here. I've talked briefly about the history of Bitcoin itself. I've talked about what's in a blockchain and trying to understand it by understanding what's in a single block. I've drawn an analogy of how transactions and the candidate block is created and how it's put in the blockchain.